Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we have with us Dr. Mihir Shah, Member Planning Commission as also member of the National Advisory Council, who will discuss in detail with us how India's massive social welfare programs indeed, how they are undergoing a huge transition in terms of how they are delivered. Welcome to our show, Dr. Mihir Shah. I will begin with a framing question as to what are the key elements today that the UPA is trying to put in place in terms of reinventing the way it delivers the massive social welfare programs that this very government has designed over the last 8-9 years, whether it's NREGA, whether it's health schemes, rural health mission, or various other. Could you just give us an idea? How is delivery changing?
See, I think we need to go back to a very important year in India's democratic history, and that is the year 2004. If you recall, there was a government in power which was saying that India is shining, and the people of India voted with their feet, rejecting that slogan. And the new government, the UPA one, which came to power, had a clear mandate of inclusive growth. And a lot of initiatives were taken to spend much more on these programs and also to have rights-based legislations backing up this welfare approach. And we have seen this huge increase in allocations for programs such as the Mahatma Gandhi, NREGA and other programs in the 11th five-year.
The total increase, I'm told, from 94 until now, if you take a 15-year period, is from 8,000 crore in, say, 94 roughly to about 2 lakh crore today per year?
Yes, I think that would be approximately right. Yeah. And, you know, so these last 8 years in which this work has happened has also thrown up a lot of learnings. I have called it in a nutshell, I describe it as the U without Q syndrome. Okay. See, what's happening is we have a lot of focus now on universalization. There's a rights-based framework. There is an attempt to have universal coverage, whether it's in
food or education,
employment guarantee, now healthcare, we are talking of these things. But the challenge that these years have thrown up is that while we have increased allocations, there is what the Honorable Prime Minister has called an increasing outlay-outcome gap.
Okay.
That the outlays have increased, but the enduring outcomes on the ground are not as visible as we would have liked.
So you're looking at redesigning all these programs.
So we are looking at a major paradigm shift, which would change the way these programs actually are implemented on the ground, how they actually effectively deliver outcomes on the ground.
Okay.
And let me sort of elaborate that.
So in a way, it's creative destruction of old vested interests so that programs become more inclusive.
Well, I am a great fan of Schumpeter, so I would appreciate the use of creative destruction to describe this process. Now, what's happening, for example, in the Mahatma Gandhi NREGA, just to illustrate, we have generated huge amounts of employment. It has gone to the poorest people. There's been very good self-selection. The scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, women have benefited. Okay. And as I often say, this is the largest employment program in human history. But what it has failed to do, and this we have admitted I have redesigned MGNREG as 2.0, what we have said is that it has not fully utilized its potential in terms of generating rural livelihoods, in terms of becoming a self-sustaining program, and in terms of strengthening democracy at the grassroots. I think these were very lofty and absolutely legitimate goals of this program which have not been achieved, and we have done a lot now in order to facilitate movement in this.
Why is the success of NREGA so patchy? Is it because it's worked well in some states because in those states institutions, bureaucracy, etc. is better, stronger, or maybe grassroots awareness is stronger, or what is the reason?
No, I think that's right. Those are elements which explain success, and that is what we are trying to do now. What we are saying is, look, this program is essentially meant for areas where there is demand for work. In universalizing a program like this, the weakness, the flip side, is that it goes to areas like Punjab, where there is actually a shortage of labor. It's not needed, in the form it was visualized. Okay. So what we are saying is we will...
So this is the learning, as it were...
this is the learning.
Over the last 6 years, yeah.
This is the learning of the last 6 years. And what we are saying is we are going to make a very focused intervention in those blocks. And this is a very major shift in the 12th plan. In this entire redesign, the paradigm shift, all of these programs are now going to go much...
So in a sense, better off states where wage levels are already relatively higher will not be appropriate for this program?
No, see, let's put it this way. This is a demand-driven program. in those states, it is anyway happening that the demand is not coming. But the problem is if you have a target-oriented mindset, which has been the way government programs have been run, that there are expenditure targets which you have to meet. You cannot have that approach in a program like NREGA. Sure. It has to be demand-driven, and what we have said is now, in those blocks which have more than 30% population of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, or which have spent 12 crores per annum in any of the last 6 years, we are going to make special provisions and have a special focus on these areas. We are going to create cluster facilitation teams in clusters of Gram Panchayats. See, the problem, I must go back again.
But are you first choosing states which are more appropriate for to deliver this program, or are you just going by
See, that's what I'm saying.
districts?
We have to go for blocks rather than even districts.
Okay, you're going even granular, even further granular.
We have to go down because that's where the problem is. See, take
So you could have some tribal districts in Gujarat also, which is otherwise
Exactly.
seen as a more industrialized state.
No, absolutely. In fact, that's the point. People don't realize Gujarat hides a lot of pockets
It
of
has
huge
a
poverty.
huge tribal population.
There is a huge tribal population, there are huge pockets of malnutrition, and these have to be the areas of focus. Even in the integrated action plan, for example, we are going to go towards a block. We are saying the problem has been that we made this commitment in terms of resources and in terms of entitlements, rights-based entitlements, but we did not give the human resources, the professional human resources which will imbue these programs with quality.
So if you're going block level, so you'll choose blocks across different states,
Yes.
which are really poor,
Yes.
where wage rates are much lower than say average, national average.
No, let me again correct you there. See, this is a demand-driven program. Once you have an
So I'm saying that there is natural demand where wages are lower,
Exactly.
right?
So we don't prescribe anything. You see, the problem is we are going to change this top-down approach where you had targets which you had to fulfill, and then a lot of corruption happened.
So you're moving from top down to
we are doing
demand driven from bottom.
Exactly. It's an iterative process actually, but we take into account the demand, we look at those blocks, we provide special human resources for those blocks, and we divide those blocks into 3 clusters of Gram Panchayats. See, we said that we gave a historic commitment in the 73rd Amendment. We said Gram Panchayats will be empowered. We have given money through the NREGA, but we have not given the requisite human resources. I will tell you in the 12th 5-year plan, the largest increase, I'm not at liberty to reveal all the details, but the largest increase in outlays is going to happen for the Ministry of Panchayati Raj.
Okay.
Because this is a major, again, this is a paradigm shift can only happen if you actually empower your panchayats. If you don't do that, you're just talking big but doing very little. And unfortunately, that's in a sense what has happened for many years. But now we are going to make it possible for the Gram Panchayats to become the major implementing agencies of programs such as NREGA, and then the quality will come. And let me tell you the vision for the NREGA articulated in the 12th plan. See, this is the paradigm shift. We don't want a country which will be permanently dependent on what would be reduced to a dole. Yeah. We are saying NREGA will lead to the creation of rural water infrastructure, which will generate...
So you're linking it to rural assets?
Assets and livelihoods.
Watershed programs, etc.
It will be based on a watershed approach. It will be entirely based on a watershed approach.
In some states or in all states?
In all states.
All states, okay.
And what we are going to say is, once these livelihoods are generated, you know, one fact which people don't remember.
No, I'm asking you this because in states like Bihar and all, Eastern UP, water tables are pretty high. So do they also require watershed program as much as say arid regions of Gujarat?
Let me complete my point. I'll come back to your Bihar point, but let me complete my point. What I'm saying is, once you generate livelihoods, a very important fact about NREGA is that a large proportion of laborers, the workers, are actually small and marginal farmers. Once you improve the livelihoods in rural areas, these people are going back to farming. Wherever good work has happened in NREGA, these people are shown the way. So the allocations on NREGA can actually decline over time. And that's what the 12th plan is visualizing, that if this productivity increase happens, if it really becomes a livelihoods program, rather than only...
So you're saying there will be self-selection eventually, yeah?
And there will be a reduction in people who depend on government for employment, because the rural economy will pick up, as it has in some areas. As far as Bihar and...
No, can we just discuss this in greater detail after a small break?
Okay.
Please don't go away and stay with us. Welcome back to State of the Economy. We are having a very interesting conversation with Dr. Mihir Shah on how India's massive social welfare programs are being redesigned and redelivered. Dr. Shah, you were very interestingly talking about moving from a top-down approach to now bottom-up, demand-driven. And the second point you made was, more importantly, significantly delivering them through the panchayat regime. Now, how will the panchayat system change from the way it works presently? Could you just elaborate?
That's right. See, what's happening is the panchayat system is in a sense inheriting a system of power and relations at the rural areas which was dominated by a certain section of the population. What we need to do is to get a genuine leadership representing the poor people, the women, the Adivasis and the Dalits. Now, in order for that to happen, we need a process of social mobilization. We need to activate the Gram Sabha. We need to make the Gram Panchayat a genuinely democratic institution. And for that, we are making special provisions.
When you say we need to do it, isn't this an organic process? How can
the organic process?
How can government work in this?
See, what I am saying is that it's not happening spontaneously.
It's not happening.
And you know, there's a lot of romanticism about village communities among social activists, but I think that is misplaced.
So you're saying that intervention is needed? Okay.
We need facilitation. Okay. We need a cadre of social mobilizers which we are putting together through these cluster facilitation teams, through the Rajiv Gandhi Panchayat Sashakti-Karan Abhiyan. This is a new program of the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, which is going to enable these processes, give them dynamism at the grassroots. You know, the people need, the people who want to aspire for leadership in Gram Panchayats need a lot of support in the transition period. And that is what many civil society organizations have done in different parts of the country. We are taking a cue from that work and making this possible through the mainstream.
Are you saying this because the experience so far is that in large parts, the working of the panchayat system has again fallen victim to this same feudal framework.
There is elite capture. There is elite capture.
There's a capture
yes.
by the elite at the bottom.
Yes, but there are also counter examples where this kind of mobilization has happened. The really disadvantaged, that is empowered, have come to power and are effecting change through the medium of the Gram Panchayat and the Gram Sabha.
You mean there are examples of good panchayat systems delivering some of your social welfare programs in a more inclusive way?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you give one or two examples? Which states are they?
Well, they are happening in Madhya Pradesh, they are happening in Karnataka, they are happening in Andhra Pradesh. These are examples which have also been documented well. There is a national consortium of civil society organizations on NREG which has documented these good practices.
And why are these working as opposed to others which are not working?
Why this is working is, one, traditionally there has been some historical support to the panchayat system in these states, but it's also because of the critical support being provided by civil society organizations who are not substituting Gram Panchayats. You see, the old NGO model was that the NGOs become a replacement for state structures. What these civil society organizations are doing, they are supporting the Gram Panchayats to plan for NREGA, to implement NREGA, to create leadership.
So this is what you were talking about, facilitating.
Facilitating. And that is what will happen through the Rajiv Gandhi Panchayat Sashakti-Karan Abhiyan, where the Gram Panchayats will be facilitated, they will be empowered to develop the capacities. See, capacity building is the key, and it's a theme of the 12th
But Mir, how do you prevent, I completely take your point, but how do you prevent the capture of some panchayat governing system, again by the caste elite, the old elite, you know?
See, we cannot sort of guarantee prevention. Okay, what we can do is facilitate those who are making, using democracy in the way it is supposed to be used. That is, having a plank, a mandate for development, for empowerment, for livelihood creation, for water security, and we support that kind of move wherever it happens. Of course, there will be back and forth. It will take time, by the way. It's not a quick fix.
It's not a quick fix. Because I'm particularly asking you this because I've read reports that in Rajasthan, for instance, this kind of a delivery system, bottom-up panchayat delivery system of Narega, etc., working better in some districts where, for instance, Jats are not dominant community, whereas in districts where Jats are very heavily dominant politically, it's not working. So how is the caste system impacting some of these?
I would urge, of course the caste system is impacting, but let's not have a frozen idea of India. all of us keep talking about this as if this is a
No, I
fixed
agree with
reality.
you. We should.
It's
we,
moving.
We should look
You know,
forward. Yeah.
you have no, I have lived 20 years in rural areas, in central India, where all of these things have been highly prevalent. But these places are changing.
They're changing. How are they changing? That's what I want to
They are
understand.
changing because a new leadership is asserting itself, where it gets the kind of necessary support in the transition period. These are the poorest people. These are the
A
disempowered.
development-oriented leadership.
A
right?
development-oriented leadership, which is not tied to the old equations of caste and religion. They are speaking a different language. They are the youth of this country, and they need our support. And that's what we are trying to provide.
So, in this process of facilitation that you just spoke about,
Yes.
under the Rajiv Gandhi, the
Panchayat
program,
Sashaktikarana Abhiyan.
I presume that you will then encourage this sort of leadership, the new youth
Yes.
leadership, which is more development-oriented.
And we build their capacities. They need to understand how panchayats function. Huge amounts of money is now being devolved, as you
How
know.
much is being delivered to panchayat today of all the centrally sponsored schemes?
Well, about 50% is being delivered to panchayats.
So you're saying that about 100,000 crore in a year
Absolutely.
is delivered to panchayat.
But the problem is that a lot of it is going down the drain. It's not being well utilized.
It's also captured by the elite at
Is
the.
captured, the lack of capacities. Everything is not about elite capture. It's also about not knowing how to go ahead, not knowing the provisions of these programs properly. Once they know that, and it's a large process of social education, I would call it, where people understand what this money is meant for, how it is to be used, and they devise then the creative solutions,
Okay.
which they innovate upon. So
And
that's happening.
I know. How much would, for instance, a direct cash transfer scheme, for instance, I'll delve in this in greater detail.
Yeah.
Would help in breaking the old hierarchies, which control some of these. Because because Nitish Kumar, I remember interviewing the Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, and he said in one discussion that he finds that cash transfer is ideal to break through the caste system, because it's the upper caste which controls the administrative apparatus. So you have to, if you want to bypass,
See,
cash
what
transfer is very good.
What is NREGA? It's essentially a conditional cash transfer scheme. What is the bicycle scheme of Nitish Kumar? It's a conditional cash transfer scheme. What you're saying is we transfer cash to the ultimate beneficiary, conditional upon certain things like sending girls to school or creating assets under NREGA. These are all conditional cash transfer schemes. They're already in place. What we are doing through Aadhaar, etc., is actually to create the technological architecture which will enable quick transfer. And we are working very much, part of my work in the National Advisory Council, I am convening a working group which is essentially about all of this. That is how to improve the implementation of our flagship programs. And one of the key things we are focusing on is fund flow. It's not just about the Aadhaar card. It's about the way money flows through the system and how convoluted those flows are.
Which are the 3 or 4 flagship programs that you are focusing on now? One is employment guarantee,
Drinking water, sanitation, National Rural Livelihoods Mission. These are my major programs. The watershed program. These are the major programs that, because I handle these in the Planning Commission.
Okay, we'll take a small break here and come back to this discussion. Please don't go away and keep watching Raj Sabha Television. Welcome back to State of the Economy. We are having a very interesting conversation with Dr. Mihir Shah on the optimal delivery of social welfare programs in our country. Dr. Shah, you were on a very interesting point of using technology on the one hand to bypass the old Western interests, and on the other, you also spoke about building bottom-up capacity,
Yes.
social political capacity,
Yes.
so that a new leadership emerges. So are you saying that these two initiatives would act like some sort of a pincer
Absolutely.
movement?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think you can describe it like that because technology, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, the NREGA, you see, the major complaint under this program across the country is delays in wage payments. What Andhra Pradesh has done is there's a specially designed software by the TCS, which is end-to-end software which enables real-time monitoring of the payment flow through the system. And any delay at any point can be captured real time and fixed. And this has led to dramatic improvement in outcomes.
In Andhra Pradesh?
Yes.
Yeah. But can this be, for instance, I read in the Indian Express, we carried an opinion article saying that under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, money is not reaching the teachers. So now can this be replicated across the country, this real-time monitoring of how the money goes and where it goes?
You see, we are now putting in place new systems for fund flow, and that's what I was talking about in the National Advisory Council. We are working on a system which will speed up and will reduce the so-called float. You know, there's a lot of money which is lying unutilized in different bank accounts because of the way in which this architecture was designed.
A bit like cash flow management.
Yes, exactly. And that is going to be completely rationalized so that there will be no such float. There will be on demand availability of money, but not unnecessary money lying around unutilized in the system. And that will reduce the opening balances which have characterized NREGA for so many years now. And money just unutilized, 10,000 crores in an opening balance. I mean, that's not acceptable for a country of our dimensions.
Of a dimension, yeah. But when can this be fully in place?
I think within a year from now. I would say that we are all ready. It's being tested out in many states. The pilots are going on, and I think we'll be in a position. And along with the Aadhaar architecture, I think we'll be able to.
This is fund flow tracking system is separate, as you said.
Yes. The Aadhaar is a last mile delivery.
The Aadhaar is, of course, the last mile delivery.
Yes.
So are you suggesting, assuming that these two are in place within a year, as you said, how much do you think will we save in our delivery? I mean, what's your rough estimate?
Well, it'll run into hundreds of thousands of crores, because it's not just saving; it's actually making it reach in time to the people for whom it is meant. These delays are killing so many of our programs. In the ICDS, the Anganwadi workers are not getting their payment for months on end. This, completely reduces the morale of our frontline functionaries of the state. So the capacities have to be improved also through better systems, which will support.
So in a way, what you're saying by default will also emerge as the most probably efficient expenditure management system.
Right? I would say so. That's what we want to do. And there's no reason, with the technology available, the software engineers we have, I don't see any problem. On Aadhaar, my only concern is it should move fast in the areas where it is most required. And that I am pressing upon the Unique Identity Authority.
So are you implying that this 200,000 crore that goes into all the centrally sponsored schemes, all the welfare programs, if actually delivered optimally through the instruments that you just spoke about, could save us maybe 50% of that money?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So this could emerge as the biggest.
It's a game changer. It's a game changer. Absolutely.
It will also attack our fiscal deficit issue.
Absolutely. And allied with the kind of initiatives at the grassroots, which I spoke about, which are strengthening democracy, improving capacities, will improve outcomes on the ground. See, because the NREGA cannot be a success if it is only a wage employment program. Yeah, sure. It has to be a livelihood generation program, and it has to
some asset creation.
That's the thing. Livelihoods cannot be created by without creation of assets. In the new guidelines which I have issued recently, we have included many new kinds of assets which will permitted activities under NREGA, which could transform the face of rural India.
Now, my next question would be if 200,000 crores is what you spend today or allocate today, and if you can, with all these instruments in place, if you can save 100,000 crore of this every year, you would be hurting a lot of vested interests at the bottom grassroots level. Sure. So how do you anticipate?
But that is why
dealing with those issues.
That's right. That's why we have a two-pronged pincer movement, as you called it. Yeah. We are creating the forces on the ground who will own the system and defend it. They will become the primary stakeholders when the NREGA workers find that they are getting payments in time, water security is being assured, and it's already happening in the areas I have worked for 20 years. This is the dynamics I saw in action. That the women of the village say this is our program and no force on earth can deter us from it, and those vested interests have to fall in line, because there is no greater power than the power of an organized group of people who are motivated by this positive agenda.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm optimistic if you're able to deliver this, these global rating agencies will be more enthused by this than by some foreign investment in retail and other structural reforms. I think this is the big structural reform that people are expecting to happen.
This is what
right?
I have been saying. We have to redefine the notion of reform. Every reform is not to be defined only in terms of how it helps the corporate sector.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, the major reform.
I think this is the real structural reform.
This is the real structural reform. But the economic imagination of the global rating agencies must change. Yeah. Although I must say,
I would imagine that if you tell global rating agencies that this is what is going to happen in the next 2 years, they will be most enthused.
I was actually happy to see a latest issue of the Time magazine, which is focused on India on the cover, and they have a very interesting story on NREG, which is actually focused on the kinds of things we are talking about.
Tell me, the allocation to NREG is already coming down, right, as compared to, say, 3 years ago. Is it self-selection, or is it demand has gone down, or has delivery become more efficient?
I think first I'll just correct you, it's not coming down. What's happening is because of the opening balances, we have kept it at more or less the same level at this point. The self-selection and the actual dropping out of people from the program is something that will happen in the years to come when the asset creation and the livelihood generation happens. Right now we are holding it, and of course it's a demand-driven program. If in fact in the short run there is an increase in demand, as the efficiency of the program improves, we will allot more resources, but our confidence is that as the program performs better, the allocations required and the demand for the program will gradually go down.
I also want to ask you, you're from Gujarat. Why has Gujarat managed to create 100,000 plus water bodies in the last, say, 6-7 years, and other states have not managed this?
No, I think many states have done this, not only Gujarat, but Gujarat has done something else which is very important, and which is that they have separated the power feeders which give electricity to farmers and to the rest of the village. I think this is a reform which is now happening in the rest of the country.
Which is happening in Madhya Pradesh also.
It's happening in Madhya Pradesh, it's happening in Chhattisgarh, it's happening in all the states now, in fact, where what that does is, in fact in Gujarat, the water table has recovered in the last 10 years, which is a stunning fact. It's the combination of watershed development and the separation of feeders which has made this possible, and this is what we are commending to all the states, and they are doing it because this is the way in which you can make sure that farmers don't excessively use power to grow their crops, which was happening when the power supply was uncertain. Now you have a high quality but rationed power supply of 8 hours given to the farmers.
So what you're suggesting is that the Gujarat experiment of water tables actually recovering should get replicated even in states like Haryana, where water tables have got devastated in the last
Yes,
10 years.
I think Haryana, in fact, the possibilities are even greater because you have alluvial soil, where the water table can recover very fast. But they have other issues of water quality. Haryana and Punjab have reached a very different stage because of the backlash of the Green Revolution, and there is uranium in the water in Punjab. So I am actually and then there is also a problem of waterlogging, which is happening in another part of the state. So it's a more complex problem. We are addressing that through a series of measures.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. Hoping that some of the big initiatives that you are talking about, they bear fruition in the next 2 years. That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you again next week. Thank you.